Good evening, everybody. It is 8 o'clock according to my timer on my computer. So it is time for another episode of the Gingerbread Project. So tonight is night 3, and we're going to be working on the little Santa hat. So let me flip my camera view so I can show you. Hi, everybody. My name is Yvonne, and this is the Jelly Roll Club. If you are new, please tell us where you're from in the chat. But if you're not new, just tell us where you're viewing from as well. It's kind of nice to know who we're out there with. This is kind of an interactive type of live stream so that you can ask questions in the chat and I will answer them. If I don't get to your questions during the live stream, I go through and I read all the comments and I respond the following night. And so if you have any questions at all, you just drop those in the chat and I'll be happy to answer those. All right. If you have not hit the thumbs up, please give us a thumbs up really quick. And let me show you what we're going to be doing. Tonight is December 6th, so we're going to be making the little Santa hat. But before we get started with the Santa hat, let me kind of recap where we've been because I teach something just slightly different each night that we do this project. And just like all of my other quilt-alongs, these are designed to kind of be skill builders and teach you something a little bit different every night. So let's see who we have out there. I see Sue and Maureen from Colorado. Hi, Maureen. I see Susan. A couple of people from Colorado. My sister lives in Colorado Springs. And so hello to all my Colorado people. So we got somebody from Canada and we have somebody from Georgia. Welcome, M. Miller and Lisa, and then Linda Smith. Welcome, everybody. All right. So just to recap, on day 1, I showed you how to get started on the little swirly twirly cookie. And I like how this little swirly twirly cookie turned out. I'm experimenting with all of these ornaments. So on this side, I did a blanket stitch on my sewing machine, but it flattened out my felt, so I didn't like how it looked. And then on this side, I did it with metallic thread. I used 3 strands instead of the 6 that I started with because I didn't like it. I did 3 strands of metallic DMC floss, and I like how that turned out. And then I just used pearl cotton on the outside. So I used just regular pearl cotton, which looks like a little tiny thin thread. I did it single strand on the outside, and it gave me this little fine little houndstooth look to it. So that was night 1. Night 2, I showed people how to take the same pattern and convert it to fabric. So this is my fabric one, and it's quilted. So as you can see, I put little quilty lines in between, and so this one is quilted and it's made out of fabric. So I like how they both look. For this one, I still have to sew it closed right there and put a little ribbon to hang it with. This one, I can run a ribbon right through the felt and I can hang that from the tree with ribbon, or I can put a metal hook right through the felt. And so these are done, and I can set these aside and we can continue. Night 2, we started working on the little frosted star. As you can see, mine is about halfway done, and I tried it 2 different ways. I tried to stitch down like a satin stitch and some cording. I didn't like how that looked. And on this side, I basted some woolly yarn, and now I'm going to come back and satin stitch all of that woolly yarn. So I kind of like this side better, so that's going to be the front of my star. I'm going to put the ugly side to the inside of the tree because nobody's going to look at that. But now that we are here, I'm going to show you some different aspects of the fabric one. So I'm going to show you a little bit of applique on this guy, and I'm also going to show you another little technique on how to finish those edges. But this is the little Santa hat, and I have 2 felt pieces. I just layered them one on top of the other. I traced around that with a pencil, and then I cut the pencil lines away, and I have 2 of these that are mirror imaged, right? And so that's the piece that I have for the Santa hat. For this Santa hat, I showed you guys last night how to trace the piece, right, all the way around. So I traced him, if you notice, because you end up with a reverse image. And then I stitched a 1/4 inch away from the line, and then I turned him inside out through the little hole, just like I did the swirly twirly cookie. And now I've made 2 little cardboard templates for the pom-pom and the brim of the little Santa hat. And that's going to look really, really cute. So let's see who else has joined us. We have like 50 people out there right now who are live with us. So who do we have out there? Hi, Bev. We have Kay and Shirley and Susan and Carolyn. Welcome to all of our friends. Darlene and let's see, Grace. Then we have Tina. Welcome, 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 everybody. My name's Yvonne, and we are working on felt ornament number 3. Okay, so if you notice, this happened with this one, this little swirly twirly cookie, and it also happened with this one. When you cut an 18-inch piece of thread and you start to sew the blanket stitch all the way around, this is a great big wide blanket stitch, and I like this one on the star. You're going to end up with, at some point, running out of thread. And I'm going to show you how to do your start and your stop. So I showed you how to start, right? You start in the inside and you make 1 loop. And then from there, you sew the blanket stitch all the way around. But then you get to this end and you have to tie it off. And so what I did is I just tied it off, and now I'm going to show you how to start again so that it's not super obvious where you are starting and where you are stopping. For the little star, I'm using again some pearl cotton, but you could use 3 strands of DMC or even 2 strands of DMC floss. So you could use either 2 strands of DMC floss, or you could use a double strand of the pearl cotton. And the pearl cotton is made by DMC. It just comes in a little, looks like a little miniature ball of yarn. And it's just string that's kind of thick. I'm using a needle with a nice big eye. And this is like a 2.5 inch needle. So it's a nice size needle that I'm using with this pearl cotton. I doubled it. And then I'm going to put a knot in it just like you do a quilter's knot. So you're going to hold it on the opposite end, pinch it with your finger, roll it about 3 times, and you're going to push it all the way down the needle to the bottom, and it gives you that nice, neat knot. And so now I'm going to start this. And by the way, in order to keep these from shifting, I put a little bit of glue in the middle today, and I let it dry all day while I was at work. And so let me show you how to start that. So I'm going to come in from the side in between the layers, and I'm going to poke that needle through the back. Can you see that? I'm poking that in between the layers, and I'm coming through the back. And if you shift any of your other layers out of place, you can always just take your needle, the back of your needle, and you can pull it, and you can straighten those back out. So just straighten them out so that they're not all puckered. Okay, once I do that, I'm going to come in behind the last loop that I did, and I'm going to pull my thread just like so. Can you guys see that? And so I'm coming in from the inside, I'm leaving that knot inside there, and I'm coming through that last loop on the outside. And then when I start, I'm just going to hold it like I do a crochet hook. I'm going to start on the inside of the ornament, and I'm going to bring it behind. So I come to the front, poke it through, rock it from the back, and it loops up just like this. And I hold it with my fingers like this just to kind of make sure that stays in right there. so you don't lose that loop, and then you're going to close it. And you're going to want to have it tight but not too tight, because you want those to lay flat, and you want that to lay like a little flat scallop along the edge. You don't want that to be too tight so that it just kind of sinks in and distorts your felt. So you got to kind of be careful with felt, because you can stretch it and you can distort it. Because felt is literally just loose fibers, either wool or acrylic fibers that have been punched with a needle or a set of needles, literally just over and over and over again until it all kind of melds together. And I've made like felted sculptures using llama roving and sheep roving, which is just like the wool that's been carded and it's kind of loose. And I love doing that. And so you're just going to do the same thing. And look, you can't even tell where one ended and one began. Okay? And so that's how I'm going to finish my my little happy star. Okay? When you come to the top of a peak, or when you come to a corner, you're just going to want to, here, and that just goes over that. You're going to want to angle it like this. You see how that goes like this? So when you turn the corner, you're going to want to get a little bit closer together, pull your needle through, and that enables you to kind of wrap around that corner smoothly with a nice even stitch length. And that's just kind of a trick I've learned. Where do I get my wool felt? My favorite place to shop for wool felt, and she has dozens of colors of wool felt, is from a little Etsy vendor. And let me pull it out. And there you have it. Do you see how I wrapped that corner? I got closer together here at the bottom, but I kept the same stitch length across that corner. And that's how you come around an outside curve when you are blanket stitching, to make it nice and even. All right, so let me pull out my my packet of wool so you can see. And so here it is. This is my favorite wool vendor, and it's Sweet Emma Jean. And you can find Sweet Emma Jean on Etsy. And she sells these multi-packs of wool, and they are just beautiful and vibrant. So I love buying my felt from her, and they're just the right thickness for like penny rugs. And you're going to see a project with this packet here. So you just stay tuned, because next year I'm going to be doing some woolly rugs and some woolly projects with all of the wool that I've been collecting. All right. And so same thing happens. You just come down the hill, and you can get really fast with this. Like once you get good at it, you can just literally go to town. If you're like a slow stitcher and you want to take your sweet time, that's fine too. But you can get really fast with this. Just don't stab yourself on the other side. But this needle is not super sharp, but it's sharp enough. And I find that when you're using pearl cotton, it's better to use a bigger needle. Pearl cotton is great for tying a quilt. If you've never tied a quilt, I'm going to teach you how to do that in 2023, because I'm going to be making some quilts for foster kids through a program called CASA. And so I'm going to be showing how to make quilts that are tied. For those of you who don't have long arm machines and want to be able to finish a quilt that's cuddly and durable, I'm going to show you how to tie a quilt next year. Okay, so now we get to the part where it elbows in, and you're going to go the opposite direction. It's going to get a little bit further apart across the bottom and then closer together across the top. So you're going to come just a hair further than you normally do. And then at the top, it's going to come in just like that. And that, my friends, is how you turn that inside corner. And then you just go like that. And see, before you know it, you've wrapped all the way around. And so that's my star, and I'm going to put him away for now because I still have to come back in and I have to satin stitch across the entire star. So that's going to take me some time, so I'm going to set this guy aside and I'm going to move on to the little Santa hat. Okay, so this little Santa hat can be made just like the other one, but I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of an invisible stitch on the Santa hat if you want to do an invisible stitch. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to, and this is on cardstock, but the first thing that I need to do is I need to cut 2 mirror images of this part of the hat, the little red part. And if you notice, the red part needs to overlap because it's going to slide under the pom-pom and it's going to slide under the brim. So you're going to have to make this little piece just a tiny bit bigger, just like that, and that's your overlap. So I'm going to take and I'm going to cut my template out, and not with my good scissors. I'm going to use my paper scissors for that. And I'm just going to trim him. I'm going to leave a little extra right here where he touches the pom-pom. Not a lot. And then I'm just going to come across here and trim this out. And that's going to be my template for the top of the hat. And just like before, I can pin it on there. I can clip it. It doesn't have to be very specific. I can now use this part to make my little cardboard template. I actually just traced that. And so that's going to be the little brim. And that's going to be the little pom-pom, just like that on mine. So I'm going to take and I'm going to cut this out. Like I said, you don't have to pin it. You don't have to do anything fancy. You can just literally just hold it just like that. You can trace it if you want with a little bit of an ink pen. And like I said, this can be done with chalk as well. But an ink pen will do, it's just like at an angle so that that rolls across the felt. Like I said, you can do this with chalk if you have dressmaker's chalk, but ink pen leaves a pretty good little mark. Just like that. And there you have it. And then I'm going to cut away that ink line. So it doesn't matter that it's there. I'm simply going to cut away the ink line so that I don't have to worry about it showing on my finished piece. And I've got it doubled up, and the reason I have it is because it gives me 2 perfect mirror images, right? 1 for each one. And you see how you can see a little bit of ink? That one's going to go on the back side. And so this will lay right here. And on the other one, it'll lay this way. And so when you have this, you are going to have 2 perfect mirror images. So today, I'm going to show you how to do the kind of invisible stitch on this. And I'm going to show you how to do a turned edge for these 2 pieces if you're doing with fabric. So this is the fabric, and I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to show you that in a minute. And I'm going to show you how to do the invisible stitch on this part first. Oh, hi, Victoria. No worries. All right, so let me show you how to do the invisible stitch. The first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get some very fine thread. And for this, I'm going to use a cotton thread. And I'm going to use a single strand of a red cotton thread. I'm going to get about 18 inches of it. And some people like to staple their woolly bits together. You can certainly pin it. I like to use just a couple of these little micro pins because it's just less work down the road. So you take these little micro pins, they sink right in. And I just need like 2 to hold that in place. See, just like that. And then I'm going to put 2 on the other side. And this little woolly hat, it's going to be, this little woolly Santa hat's going to be super cute. The tighter that you pull your thread against your felt, the more of a noticeable mark you're going to have. So for this one, I'm going to take a single strand and I'm going to use a small needle. So in my needle pack, I have these needles called sharps. I'm just going to use the smallest needle I have, the thinnest actually in this pack. And it looks like a little quilting between, so it's small. It's about 1.5 inches long. And then I'm going to go put my glasses on because I cannot see. All right, here's a quick question for you guys. How many pairs of reading glasses do you have in your sewing room? I have at least 4 because I wear them on my head, I wear them around my neck, and sometimes I can't find them. How about you guys? Do you guys lose your glasses in your sewing room? I seem to lose them all the time. Last night, I asked you guys if you were thread lickers. Several of you said yes, and so I was happy to know that. And somebody even suggested that we should certainly get thread licker t-shirts. I agree with that. We could get thread lickers t-shirts. What do you guys think about that? All right, so if my eyeballs will allow me to thread that thing. A single strand is not wanting to go through that tiny little needle. So I'll just pull a bigger one. Not a big deal, right? You win some, you lose some. The older I get, the more I'm losing in the vision department. How about you guys? I think it's time to break down and get bifocals. I guess that only makes sense since I'm a grandma that I should wear bifocals at this point. Robin said, none. You wear your prescriptions all the time. I really should wear mine. Okay, so I'm using this ultra thin cotton thread, and I'm going to do it single-stranded, not double-stranded. So I'm going to do single-stranded, and it's going to be a nearly invisible stitch because that just gives it a different look. And so you're either going to emphasize your stitches like this, right? Or you're going to want your stitches to be kind of invisible like this. And in this case, I want my stitches to be invisible. So I'm going to untangle my thread. I have one little knot on the bottom. And then I'm going to come in from the back just like this, anywhere in there. And I'm going to come in about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. And I'm going to do a tiny stitch. Okay. I'm going to make sure that I have a knot so that it doesn't pull out on me. And you can do a traditional knot, you can do a quilter's knot, but it's a single strand of thread. And so I just want it to have a little knot in it. There you go. Once you pull that, you can gently tug it until you feel that knot latch. And sometimes it comes through, so you gotta do that a couple of times. So sometimes I come in from the back and do a couple of loops. There you go. And it caught on there, and so once it catches, I can trim that off, and I have the knot just on the underside of the felt. Once it's on the underside of the felt, and it doesn't come out, right? I'm going to loop it. So I'm going to come in, and I'm going to loop it through itself like this. Can you see that? Because I want that to not slip out. Okay. And then I'm going to come from the top, and about 1/8 of an inch away from that edge, I'm going to come in, and I'm just going to go down at an angle and come out about 1/8 of an inch away from that. So these are about 1/8 of an inch apart and 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And I'm simply going to create a little tiny tacking stitch. So it's going to go in like this. Now let me hold it. And then I'm going to make sure that I pull it out because I don't want it to be too tight. And as I go through here, I'm going to come in from the back side and come out from the top. And it's going to make a little teeny tiny stitch all the way around the edge. One of the beautiful things about wool applique is that the edges don't fray like fabric does. And this is not going to get washed a million times like a little fabric quilt would, or an applique quilt, maybe something that gets used a lot. So if you come in and you just stitch that little tiny invisible stitch along the edge, you can't even notice it. So you see that stitch that's coming through, it is really ultra fine, and you just see the little tiny stitches. And so what that does is it enables you, and like I said, don't pull snugly because that will distort that edge, but you're just going to come in here, and this is an invisible stitch that's used with wool applique. And so what you end up with is little tiny dots on the other side. And some people love to emphasize their thread, and some people don't. So you decide how you want to do yours, and you can either use a visible stitch, or you can use a little tiny invisible stitch. Dark Dragon has 3. I have a strap, and then I end up losing my strap. I was looking for my reading glasses the other day, and they were around my neck. So that happens to all of us, right? I've been looking for my keys sometimes, and they were in the pocket of my pants. I was like, well, that's where they were. Or the pocket of my coat. So I try not to lose my things, but I'm just too busy thinking about fabric and quilting to worry about things like my keys. All right, if your thread starts to knot, you're just going to carefully take your needle, and you're just going to pull. And like I said, try not to pull too tight, and then you're going to get this little tiny fine edge with these little teeny tiny stitches that just sink right into your felt. If you take your finger and you rub it just carefully along that edge, that makes a nice smooth edge and a little teeny tiny invisible stitch. For those of you that do not require glasses, you're lucky. I had LASIK surgery when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I have not had to wear glasses in a very, very long time. But somehow in your 50s, your eyes just start to go. And I guess that's what's happening to me. I thought 50 was going to be a dreadful age to turn 50, but actually I enjoy being in my 50s. It's fabulous. All right, friends, look at that. Quickly, you're just kind of pulling it, holding it like this with your thumb so that you're not sinking it in there too much. So you just come in from the back, and look at how quickly I made it all the way around. And you're going to do both sides of your little hat. You could certainly sew this with your sewing machine if you wanted to just top stitch it, but it will flatten it, and it'll make it look kind of like this one. See how flat this is? So it's very, very flat. But if you don't care for that look, or that's the look that you're going for, then you can do it either way. But I like it when it's dimensional. So this is how I would do it, and that's the little teeny tiny kind of invisible stitch. Yes, I do let my needle kind of dangle when it starts to tangle, and you just pull it like this. And I also use thread conditioner on my stuff. You can use a little bit of beeswax on your needle, and it works just fine when you're doing this kind of stuff. There you go. And you get to the end. When you get to the end, you're going to want to leave about, I don't know, 6 inches, because you're going to want to tunnel back to the inside, just like this. And then you're going to want to anchor it from the inside. just like that. And try not to stretch your wool applique. And I just kind of do a little loop in the back, and then I can tie it off, shove it in there. And I can tie it off again. You can make it shorter. It doesn't really matter. Just shove it in there, and then you can continue sewing all the way around. All right, it is 8:30, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move on to the fabric version of this particular one. So let's see, do we have any questions in there? And thank you, Victoria, for reminding me of that tip. Sometimes when I'm in the middle of focusing on a live stream, I forget. We have those senior moments at this point, and so I forget. But I think I've been having senior moments since I was in my 20s, so who knows. All right, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sew all the way around, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to cut felt pieces that are this size, and I'm going to sew them right on top. So you sew the red first, and then you're going to sew the white pieces onto the hat like this. And I'm going to, see how that has a little edge? I'm going to abut that piece right against there and just barely overlap it like that. And so when I'm done, and you'll see this tomorrow night, then this will be complete, and I'll have the little frosting across the top. So this one has loopy frosting. And so I'm going to be using a little bit of pearl cotton, and I'm going to show you how to do like a lazy daisy style stitch for that. And I'm going to be using double strand pearl cotton for the little loops, and you're going to see that tomorrow night. Now I could have put the frosting on there before I stitched it down, but I thought that it would be better because I can stitch all the way through the entire thing, and I could get a better placement if I sew these two on before I do the frosting. So I'm going to sew both of these halves identical, and then tomorrow when you see these, they will have the frosting done, and they will be put together like a little sandwich. And I'm going to sew them with a tan thread, and I'm going to use a tiny blanket stitch all the way around because I want this one not to have the great big stitching like this does. And so this one's going to have invisible stitches, a little Santa hat. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to finish that later. You guys get to see that tomorrow night, and I'm going to keep showing you all of these things each night as I work on them because this is a sew along. All right, so now we have our little Santa hat. This is made with fabric, and I have a little cardboard template for the brim, and I have a cardboard template for the pom-pom. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use a needle that's been threaded in black so that you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to get a piece of white fabric, and I'm going to make sure that I have at least a ½ inch all the way around. And I'm going to use my applique scissors, and I'm going to cut just a square, a rhombus, whatever this is. And I'm going to take and I'm going to trim a little bit, circular, oval, it doesn't really matter. You're just taking this like this, and you're going to leave a ½ inch of excess all the way around, just like that. And this is just a little white on white of fabric. And this thread will get removed, so it doesn't matter that it's black. And I'm going to start on this side, and I'm going to baste, great big basting stitches all the way around. It just takes a minute. Just like that. Giant, giant basting stitches. Look at that. You can even leave the tail. Doesn't matter if you leave that tail, because you're going to use this to make a little tiny shower cap, and then you're going to pull it tight. Sewing is my therapy, and sewing is my joy. So I hope that you guys are enjoying all these little projects. It's one of my favorite things to do is just to sew. It's very relaxing. And when I'm sewing, I just feel happy. I don't know about you guys, but sewing makes me happy. All right, so now that I've come all the way around to the other side, just great big stitches, nothing fancy. I'm going to come in and take one more stitch right there. And both of those tails are going to be on the same side. Like I said, they don't have to be fancy. I'm just going to cut that off. And so now I have this contraption, right? So it looks like a little bonnet. And I'm going to shove that in there and I'm going to pull it tight. Just like that, and I'm going to pull it with my fingers until it wraps itself around that little piece of cardboard, just like that. Just give it a little tug, and that's why I used black thread so you can see what I'm doing. Now that I have that, I'm going to get my handy dandy ironing board, and I'm going to take, and I am going to give this a little spritz of starch. So I'm going to use a tiny bit of starch on the back side to wet the fabric because that makes it softer and more pliable. And so now that I have that, I'm going to hold it tight with my finger and give her a press. Just like that. Yeah, hand in my sewing room used to be a 4-letter word. I never did it. I did things only by machine. I wanted to do everything fast. And then I just discovered that hand sewing can be so relaxing, and now I find myself doing more and more handwork. Okay, there you have it. You see it? It's a perfect little circle, just like that. So you're going to take, and now you're going to take that cardboard out of there and you're going to pop it out. I'm going to pull it, and you can let it dry and you can reuse that little circle. And look at here. Now this little circle is perfectly flat. So if you have an applique that requires a ton of little circles, this is how I make mine. And then once I get it out and it's no longer trapped, put that needle away so I don't lose it in my sewing room. Then I'm just going to flip it over to the front side and I'm going to give it a little press. And I have my little circle. And I can clip all the little basting threads out of there because I won't need them. If you use the same color thread as the circle, you can leave the basting threads in there. Some people do. But I used black for demonstration purposes, so I'm going to want to cut that out of there. So I'm going to pull and get it out. I don't want black thread showing through the other side of my little Santa cap. So I'm going to just dig it out of there. And I can take my tweezers, my handy dandy tweezers, and pull that out of there. I spend all the time that I can in my sewing room because I just love it. Okay, so there you have the little circle, and now I can take this little circle and I can lay it where I want it, just like that. And if I want to stuff that little circle, I could certainly put an itty bitty piece of batting in there, so I could find a little scrap. You could put a little piece of felt, but I could take a little circle of batting, take a little tiny cut all the way around, make it just a smidge smaller than the original circle, just a smidge, just like that. It's a tiny bit smaller than my circle. Do you see that? And I'm going to take and I'm going to stuff it on the other side to make it three-dimensional. So I'm going to take and I'm going to stuff it in there. I'm going to open the little shower cap for a second. And I'm going to stuff that little tiny piece of batting in there, ultra thin batting. And I'm going to close it. And I can give this one more little press. I can even press it while it's right on there, so it doesn't matter. Just to close it up. And then guess what? I'm going to lay that on there. And now it gives it dimension and it's kind of puffy. And so what I can do now is I can use a teeny tiny bit of a glue stick to glue the entire thing in place like this. Just going to give it a little twirl just to kind of hold it in place so it doesn't move around. And I can use needle and thread to just take a little tiny invisible stitch, and it looks like needle turned applique without all of the needle turn applique work. But this is one of my favorite ways. I'm learning different methods for needle turn applique, so if you have some pointers that would help me, I will be super happy. But I would just use regular thread. And let me grab some because it looks like I don't have any white sitting at my sewing machine. Oh, actually, there's some over here. I'm just going to pull some thread. Anybody else pull thread from their sewing machine? And I have this thread right here. You can use a single strand of silk, a double strand, a single strand of cotton. I've used all of it. And you simply take it and you can put a little, like I said, single strand, double strand. It doesn't really matter when you're appliquing. I prefer a single strand, but as you guys saw with the felt, sometimes a single strand is hard to get started. What do you guys use for applique, a single strand or a double strand? Linda, don't worry about being late. You can always watch the replay. It stays online after we're done. All right, so now that I have this, I can just pull it out. I'm going to come in from the back, just like this, and I'm going to tunnel it right at the seam, just like that. And I'm going to pinch it with my finger, and I'm going to come in from the side, and I'm going to come out that seam, and I'm going to make those little teeny tiny invisible stitches, again coming from the back, through the background, and out the side. So that little edge where I pressed is where you pop your needle out. Do you see that? And you push it out to the side, and you pull, and so you're able to get little teeny tiny stitches. Sometimes I come around a couple of times. I start out with kind of bigger stitches, and then I come around a second time. And that just gives me really, really pretty smooth edge applique that looks like needle turn, even though it's not needle turn. I could have done this another way. If the circle was bigger, I could have used interfacing. And some people like to do interfacing, but I just simply bury it up under the two layers, come out through that side, and keep it going. And you see how quickly this this gets stitched down, and then you can't even see along that edge. It just makes a nice, pretty edge. Like I said, adjust that, pin it in place, glue it in place. You can fiddle with that edge if it's not as smooth as you like. Like I said, you can use one of these little micro pins. These are great for applique work, just like that. And it'll hold it right where you want it so it doesn't shift around as you hold it. But this is it. This is the entirety of the little turned method. What kind of spray starch do I use? I use the $2 as cheap as you can get Faultless Luxe Finish. And it is kind of medium weight ironing. It's called Ironing Spray Pro Grade, but it doesn't leave any flaking on my pieces, which is why I like this brand. You can buy very expensive pressing sprays, but it's not necessary. There's a bunch of name brand sprays out there and they're very pricey, but it's really not necessary. I just use a little bit of regular spray starch, and look at that. Next thing you know, you're coming around from the back and you're coming out the side right there, just along that edge. And like I said, you're going to want to make sure that you're not sewing through to the other side. And so you're just coming in between those sandwiches, and there you have it, my friends. This is how you finish the little Santa hat. And I also have the little brim. I'm going to make this exactly the same way. I'm going to cut a piece slightly bigger. I'm going to baste it, and I'm going to make a piece that's going to get pinned in place just like I did the little circle. But this is just going to be a larger oval. And so I will do exactly the same thing. Wash, rinse, repeat. But it is 8:46, and I want to be mindful of your time. And so I'm going to stop where I'm at, and I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. Like I said, I have to work, and I will see you tomorrow night. You're going to see, I'm going to work on this during my lunch break tomorrow, maybe a little bit after school when I come home, but you're going to see my little Santa hat, and just like you saw the other pieces, it's going to be mostly finished, and then we'll move on to the next one, which is the Christmas bulb. So if you have any questions, don't forget to leave them in the comment section. I read all of those. I respond to my comments. If you have friends that love to sew, share the channel with your friends. So I hope that you are enjoying this fun little project. I started this as a way to get extra ornaments on my little grandbaby's tree, but I just thought this would be fun to share with you guys. I appreciate you guys following me. Watching the videos and liking is how you help promote this channel, and so then I can bring you lots of fun free content. I appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful night. I hope you guys are going to make some cute little ornaments with people that you love, and I will see you guys tomorrow night. Okay? Good night, everybody. Have a great night. Goodbye. Hasta luego. Thank you.